Maya Williams stood frozen in the doorway of the 47th floor conference room, her DoorDash bag hanging from her shoulder, watching $50 million evaporate in a language no one else in the room understood. 10 seconds ago, she was just a delivery girl who'd been told to leave the food and disappear. 5 seconds ago, CFO Richard Harrison had thrown a $20 bill at her face and called her the help. Now, as the Chinese investors laughed quietly among themselves, discussing how they planned to drain Sterling Industries dry and leave 2,000 employees jobless, Maya had a choice to make. She could take the $20, walk away, and forget everything she'd heard. Or she could open her mouth and change everything. The investors kept talking. They had no idea the delivery girl understood every single word. 30 minutes earlier, Maya had been racing through downtown Seattle on her bicycle, trying to squeeze in 3 more deliveries before her 11 p.m. shift ended. The DoorDash app had pinged with a premium order. $847 worth of sushi and sake from Nobu, destination Sterling Industries headquarters, 47th floor executive suite. Big order meant big tip, hopefully. Maya needed every dollar she could get. Her mother's chemotherapy bills had reached $47,000, and even with the payment plan, Maya was barely keeping up. She worked DoorDash from 6 p.m. to midnight, slept 4 hours, then attended classes at Columbia Business School from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. Weekends, she picked up extra shifts at Mrs. Chen's laundromat, the same laundromat where she'd practically grown up, the same Mrs. Chen who had taught her Mandarin Chinese when Maya was just 7 years old. Maya's mother, Denise Williams, had been a single mom working 3 jobs when the breast cancer diagnosis came. No savings, minimal insurance, maximum devastation. Maya was 19 then, a sophomore at Columbia on a full academic scholarship, top of her class in finance. She'd considered dropping out to work full-time, but her mother had grabbed her hand with surprising strength and said, "Baby, you finish that degree. You become something. Don't you dare let my sickness steal your future." So Maya didn't drop out. She just stopped sleeping. She picked up the DoorDash gig, the laundromat shifts, the tutoring jobs. She maintained her 3.9 GPA while watching her mother shrink in a hospital bed. The doctor said Denise was responding to treatment, that there was hope, but hope cost $3,000 a month in medications alone. Maya did the math every night before she closed her eyes. The numbers never added up, but she kept pedaling, kept delivering, kept believing that somehow, someday, things would change. The DoorDash bag Maya carried everywhere was old and worn, the red fabric faded to pink in patches. It had belonged to her mother. Denise had worked delivery jobs too, back before the cancer, and she'd hand-embroidered her name on the inside flap in golden thread. "So they know whose bag it is," she'd joked. "So they know Denise Williams was here." Maya never got a new bag, even when DoorDash sent her a replacement. She kept her mother's bag, kept the golden thread, kept the reminder that she came from a woman who worked hard and never complained. Every delivery Maya made, she made with her mother's name pressed against her hip. Sterling Industries occupied the top 15 floors of a glass tower in downtown Seattle. Maya had delivered here before, usually to the lower floors, the regular employees who ordered lunch and tipped decently. The 47th floor was different, executive territory. The elevator required a special key card, which the security guard provided with a look that clearly said, "Don't touch anything." When Maya stepped off the elevator, she entered a world of Italian marble, original artwork, and furniture that probably cost more than her mother's annual medical bills. A receptionist with perfect blonde hair and a perfect white smile directed her toward the main conference room. "They're in a meeting, but just leave the food on the side table. Don't interrupt." Maya pushed open the conference room door quietly, trying to be invisible. The room was massive, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Seattle skyline, a table long enough to seat 30 people, and at least 24 executives in suits that cost more than Maya's bicycle. At the head of the table sat a silver-haired man she recognized from business magazines. James Sterling, founder and CEO of Sterling Industries, a tech conglomerate worth billions. To his right sat a younger man with slicked-back hair and a permanent sneer, Richard Harrison, the CFO, known in business circles for his aggressive tactics and his tendency to treat anyone below executive level like furniture. On the other side of the table sat a delegation of Chinese businessmen, 5 of them, all in identical dark suits, speaking quietly among themselves in Mandarin. Maya set the sushi platters on the side table as quietly as she could, arranging the sake bottles, laying out the chopsticks. She moved with practiced efficiency. Thousands of deliveries had taught her how to be fast, how to be silent, how to exist in spaces where people preferred not to see her. The executives didn't even glance in her direction. To them, she was part of the furniture, no more significant than the table or the chairs. Maya was used to this. Invisibility was part of the job description. She was almost done when Harrison's voice cut through the room like a whip. "Hey, delivery girl!" Maya's hands stilled over the last sack bottle. She turned slowly, keeping her expression neutral. Harrison was staring at her with the kind of contempt usually reserved for insects. His eyes traveled from her worn sneakers to her faded DoorDash jacket to the bag with her mother's name embroidered inside. She could see him cataloging every detail, every sign that she didn't belong in his world. "Yes, sir?" Maya kept her voice level, professional. The voice she'd learned to use when customers were rude, when tips didn't come, when people looked through her like she wasn't there. "You're done. Leave." Harrison's tone suggested he was doing her a favor by acknowledging her existence at all. "I just need someone to sign the receipt, sir. Company policy for orders over $500. It was true. DoorDash required a signature for premium orders, protection against claims of non-delivery. Maya had learned the hard way what happened when you skipped that step. A missing signature could mean a missing payment, and she couldn't afford to lose a single dollar. Harrison's eyes narrowed. Something flickered across his face. Annoyance, maybe, or the particular irritation of a man who wasn't used to being questioned by people he considered beneath him. He glanced at James Sterling, who was deep in conversation with one of the Chinese investors. "James, do you want to deal with this?" Sterling barely looked up from his documents. "Just handle it, Richard. We're in the middle of something important." The dismissal was casual, almost unconscious. Maya was a minor inconvenience, a mosquito buzzing around the edges of deals worth millions. She didn't register as a person worth acknowledging. Harrison stood up from his chair, and Maya felt the temperature in the room shift. The other executives were watching now. Not all of them, but enough. A few of the younger ones had turned in their seats, sensing entertainment. Harrison was known for his temper, for his cutting remarks, for the way he could humiliate subordinates with surgical precision. Maya had heard stories from other delivery drivers about executives like him. She'd never been on the receiving end herself. Until now. Harrison walked toward her slowly, deliberately, each step designed to emphasize the distance between them. He was tall, over 6 feet, and he used his height like a weapon, looming over Maya's 5'4" frame. Up close, she could smell his cologne, something expensive and aggressive, the olfactory equivalent of his personality. He looked down at her clipboard, at the receipt waiting for his signature, and his lip curled in disgust. "You want me to sign something? For you?" He said "you" like it was a slur. "You come into my conference room, interrupt my meeting, and you want me to sign a piece of paper so you can collect your little tip and run along?" Maya held her ground. Her heart was pounding. She could feel it hammering against her ribs, but she kept her face still. "It's company policy, sir. I just need a signature, and I'll be out of your way." She'd learned this too. Don't escalate. Don't argue. Don't give them more ammunition. Get what you need and get out. Survive. Harrison laughed. It wasn't a pleasant sound. Company policy, right. He turned to the room, spreading his arms as if inviting the audience to share his amusement. You hear that, everyone? The delivery girl is lecturing me about company policy. A few of the executives chuckled. Nervous laughter, the kind people make when the boss is being cruel and they don't want to become the next target. The Chinese delegation watched with polite disinterest, the way one might watch a nature documentary about predators and prey. Harrison reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out his wallet. It was leather embossed with his initials, probably worth more than everything Maya was wearing combined. He extracted a $20 bill and held it up between two fingers, studying it like he was considering whether it was too much. You know what? I'm feeling generous tonight. Here's your tip. And then he threw it. Not handed. Threw. The bill fluttered through the air and hit Maya square in the chest before falling to the floor at her feet. There you go. Now get out before you contaminate something. The room went quiet. Not the respectful quiet of people witnessing something serious. The gleeful quiet of people watching a show. Maya stood there, the $20 bill at her feet, her mother's bag heavy on her shoulder. She could feel the eyes on her, the executives waiting to see what she'd do, the Chinese investors watching with mild curiosity, Harrison standing over her with a smirk on his face, satisfied with his performance. This was entertainment to them. She was entertainment. Maya bent down to pick up the 20. Her hands were steady. She was proud of that. But inside, something was burning. 22 years of learning to swallow her pride, to keep her head down, to take the insult and walk away because the alternative was worse. 22 years of being looked through, looked past, looked down upon. 22 years of hearing people like Harrison tell her, in 1,000 different ways, that she didn't matter. She picked up the bill and straightened, her mother's name pressing against her hip. Denise Williams was here. Thank you for the tip, sir. Maya's voice didn't waver. She tucked the bill into her pocket. I'll be on my way. Behind her, she heard one of the younger executives snicker. Guess they'll let anyone into the building these days. Another voice, dripping with fake concern. At least she's not stealing the silverware. You know how they are. More quiet laughter. Maya walked toward the door, her back straight, her eyes forward. 3 more steps, and she'd be out. 3 more steps, and she could forget this room, these people, this moment. 3 more steps, and that's when she heard it. The Chinese delegation had resumed their conversation, speaking in rapid Mandarin, assuming, correctly, they thought, that no one else in the room understood. Maya's feet slowed without her permission. Mrs. Chen's voice echoed in her memory. Language is power, Maya. The more you understand, the more you see. Maya understood, and what she saw stopped her cold. The Americans are fools. The eldest investor, a silver-haired man named Wei, spoke with the casual contempt of someone discussing insects. They have no idea what they're signing. Harrison has blinded them completely. How long until we can execute the withdrawal? The second investor was younger, eager. 6 months. We acquire controlling interest through the shell companies, extract the liquid assets, approximately 80 million, then declare bankruptcy. Sterling Industries collapses, and we walk away with everything. Wei nodded slowly, satisfied. And Harrison's fee? Already deposited. 12 million in the Cayman account. He's been most cooperative. Greedy men always are. Maya's blood ran cold. She stood by the door, her hand on the handle, her back to the room. They couldn't see her face. They couldn't see the shock, the horror, the rapid calculations running through her mind. $80 million. Bankruptcy. 2,000 employees. She'd read about Sterling Industries in her finance classes, knew they employed thousands of people across the Pacific Northwest. Regular people, working people, people like her mother. What about the workers? The third investor asked the question like he was inquiring about the weather. 2,000 employees, I understand. Regrettable. Wei waved his hand dismissively. Not our concern. They'll find other jobs. Or they won't. Either way, it's not our problem once we have the money. The investors laughed softly, reaching for their sushi. The conversation shifted to other topics. Golf, real estate, a restaurant in Shanghai they all needed to try. Just like that. $80 million, 2,000 lives, and they were talking about golf. Maya's grip tightened on the door handle. Her mind was racing. She could leave. She should leave. This wasn't her company. These weren't her people. Richard Harrison had thrown money at her face and called her the help. James Sterling hadn't even bothered to look at her. Why should she care what happened to them? Let them burn. Let them all burn. They deserved it. But the 2,000 employees didn't deserve it. The secretaries and janitors and warehouse workers and IT staff. They didn't throw money at delivery girls. They didn't make deals in Cayman Islands accounts. They didn't laugh about destroying lives over sushi and sake. They were just people trying to survive, trying to pay their bills, trying to take care of their families. People like her mother, people like Mrs. Chen, people like Maya herself, before she walked into this room. Maya thought about her mother in the hospital, fighting cancer with everything she had. She thought about Mrs. Chen in her laundromat, teaching a lonely girl Mandarin because she believed knowledge should be shared. She thought about every person who had ever looked through her like she wasn't there, every door that had been closed in her face, every $20 bill thrown at her chest. She thought about what it meant to be invisible, and she made her choice. Maya turned around. The movement was sharp enough that several executives looked up from their documents. Harrison, who had already returned to his seat, frowned at her. I told you to leave. I know. Maya's voice was different now, stronger. But there's something the board needs to hear first. She looked directly at Wei, the eldest investor, and switched to perfect Mandarin. Mr. Wei, I couldn't help but overhear your conversation about the acquisition. The effect was instantaneous. Wei's face went white. The other investors froze mid-motion, chopsticks suspended in the air. Harrison's frown deepened into confusion. He didn't understand Mandarin, couldn't follow what Maya was saying, but he could read the Chinese delegation's faces well enough to know something had gone very wrong. James Sterling looked up from his documents for the first time since Maya had entered the room. What's going on? What is she saying? Maya continued in Mandarin, her eyes locked on Wei's. You discussed extracting $80 million from Sterling Industries through shell companies, then declaring bankruptcy within 6 months. You mentioned that Mr. Harrison has already received a $12 million finder's fee in a Cayman Islands account. She paused, letting the words sink in. I believe that's called fraud, and I believe the SEC would be very interested in those details. The silence that followed was absolute. 26 people in the room, and not a single one of them breathed. Wei's face had gone from white to gray. The other investors were staring at Maya like she had risen from the dead. Harrison was looking between Maya and the Chinese delegation, his confusion slowly crystallizing into something like panic. He didn't know exactly what had been said, but he knew it was bad. He knew his name had been mentioned. He knew somehow that the delivery girl he'd just humiliated had just burned his entire world down. This is absurd. Wei found his voice first. He stood, straightening his jacket, trying to project authority he no longer possessed. James, I don't know who this girl is, but she's clearly lying. This is some kind of extortion scheme. She heard us speaking Chinese and decided to make up stories for money. You can't possibly... I can't possibly what? Sterling's voice was quiet. Dangerous. He was standing now, too, his eyes moving between Wei and Maya and Harrison. I can't possibly believe that a delivery girl just happened to speak Mandarin, or I can't possibly believe that my CFO would sell out my company for a cut of the profits. James, please. Harrison's voice had gone high and tight. Sweat was beading on his forehead. You've known me for 12 years. You're going to take the word of some random black girl over mine? Look at her. She's nobody. She's probably in on it. Probably working with them to frame me. Mr. Harrison. Maya turned to face him directly. Her heart was pounding, but her voice was steady. I'm not working with anyone. I'm a senior at Columbia Business School, and I came here tonight to deliver sushi. I had no idea who was in this room or what you were planning, but I grew up speaking Mandarin. I understood every word they said. And I understood that you were helping them steal $80 million from this company and leave 2,000 people without jobs. She reached into her pocket and pulled out the $20 bill he'd thrown at her. You threw this at me and told me to leave. You called me the help. You made jokes about me stealing silverware. She held up the bill so everyone could see it. This is what you thought I was worth. $20, less than the cost of one of those sushi rolls. She looked around the room at the executives in their expensive suits, the investors in their matching outfits, the whole apparatus of wealth and power that had gathered here tonight to conduct business that would have destroyed thousands of lives. But here's the thing about being invisible. You see everything. You hear everything. People talk in front of you like you're not there because they don't think you matter. And sometimes, that's exactly when you matter most. The room erupted. Harrison started shouting, demanding that security remove Maya immediately. Wei was on his phone, speaking rapid Mandarin to someone, a lawyer probably, or a fixer. The other Chinese investors had gone into damage control mode, gathering their things, heading for the door. Several Sterling executives were on their feet, some looking confused, others looking alarmed, a few looking almost impressed. James Sterling stood at the head of the table, his face unreadable, watching the chaos unfold. Enough! Sterling's voice cut through the noise. It wasn't loud, but it carried an authority that made everyone stop. He looked at Harrison. Richard, sit down. He looked at Wei. Mr. Wei, you're not going anywhere. Security? He pressed a button on the conference table. I need a full team on 47 immediately. No one leaves this floor without my authorization. He looked at Maya. Miss Williams. Maya Williams. Miss Williams, you're going to stay here and tell me everything you heard, every word. The next 3 hours were the longest of Maya's life. Security arrived, not the lone guard who had given her the elevator key card, but a full team of serious-looking professionals who sealed the exits and took up positions around the room. Lawyers appeared as if summoned by magic, Sterling's in-house counsel and then outside attorneys, then more attorneys on video calls from New York and Hong Kong. Maya told her story 4 times, 5 times, 6 times. Each time she recounted exactly what she'd heard. The shell companies, the $80 million, the 6-month timeline, Harrison's fee in the Cayman account. Each time, the lawyers asked more questions, dug deeper, requested clarifications. Harrison went through every stage of denial. First, he denied everything outright. The girl was lying. The Chinese delegation had been discussing legitimate business. This was all a misunderstanding. Then, when Sterling's lawyers pulled up records that showed suspicious transactions over the past 18 months, Harrison claimed he'd been deceived. He thought the deals were real. He had no idea about any fraud. Then, when the lawyers found email correspondence between Harrison and Wei discussing the arrangement in coded language, Harrison tried to bargain. He'd cooperate. He'd testify against the Chinese investors. He'd return the money, if only they'd let him walk away quietly. Quietly? Sterling's voice was ice. You were going to destroy my company, Richard. My father's company. You were going to throw 2,000 people out of work so you could add another $12 million to your offshore account. And you want to walk away quietly? Harrison's face crumpled. The arrogance, the contempt, the sneering superiority, all of it collapsed like a house of cards. He looked old suddenly and frightened, and very, very small. James, please, we can work something out. I'll pay everything back. I'll disappear. You'll never hear from me again. Please don't call the authorities. Think of my family. Think of my reputation. I'm thinking of the 2,000 families who work for this company. Sterling's voice was flat. I'm thinking of their reputations, their mortgages, their children's college funds. Did you think about them, Richard? Even once?" Harrison had no answer. Sterling picked up his phone. "Get me the FBI's White-Collar Crimes Division and the SEC. I have a fraud to report." Maya watched Harrison being escorted from the building in handcuffs 4 hours later. Dawn was breaking over Seattle, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. She was exhausted, physically, emotionally, spiritually drained. But she couldn't bring herself to leave. Not yet. She stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, still holding her mother's delivery bag, watching the city wake up around her. Somewhere out there, 2,000 people were getting ready for work, brushing their teeth, kissing their spouses goodbye, completely unaware of how close they'd come to losing everything. Maya had saved them. A delivery girl with a worn bag and scuffed sneakers and a $20 bill in her pocket had saved them all. "Miss Williams." James Sterling's voice came from behind her. Maya turned. He looked older than he had at the start of the night, the weight of betrayal settling into the lines of his face. But there was something else there, too. Respect, maybe. Or gratitude. Or both. "I owe you an apology. And an explanation. And probably a great deal more than that." Maya shook her head. "I don't need an apology, sir. I just need someone to sign my delivery receipt so I can clock out." Sterling laughed. A surprised, genuine laugh that seemed to catch even him off guard. "Your delivery receipt. You just uncovered an $80 million fraud, prevented the collapse of a major corporation, and got my CFO arrested by the FBI. And you're worried about your delivery receipt." "I have bills to pay," Maya said simply. "My mother has cancer. Chemotherapy costs $3,000 a month. I can't afford to miss a delivery." Sterling studied her for a long moment. His eyes moved from her face to the bag on her shoulder to the worn sneakers on her feet. "Tell me about yourself, Miss Williams." So Maya told him. About Columbia, about her GPA, about her mother's diagnosis, her father's absence, the night she stayed up until 3 a.m. studying for a corporate finance exam, and then got up at 5 a.m. to work a laundromat shift. She told him about Mrs. Chen, who had taught her Mandarin when she was 7, who had watched her grow up, who had always believed she was destined for something more than delivery runs and minimum wage. She told him about the 47 job applications she'd submitted and the 47 rejections she'd received, each one a reminder that talent and hard work meant nothing without connections and pedigree. 47 rejections? Sterling shook his head slowly. Those companies are idiots. They had a chance to hire someone with more courage, more integrity, and more raw intelligence than half the MBAs in this city. And they said no because you didn't have the right last name or the right summer internship or the right parents. He paused. Their loss. My gain. He pulled out his phone. "Miss Williams, I'm going to make you an offer. Come work for Sterling Industries, not as a delivery person, as a financial analyst. $95,000 to start, full benefits, and a signing bonus that should cover your mother's medical bills." Maya blinked. "Sir, I appreciate the gesture, but I don't want a job because you feel guilty. I don't want charity." "This isn't charity," Sterling said. "This is the smartest hiring decision I'll make all year. You demonstrated more financial acumen, more courage, and more ethical backbone in 5 minutes than Richard Harrison showed in 12 years. I don't feel guilty. I feel lucky." He held out his hand. "So what do you say? Do we have a deal?" Maya thought about her mother in the hospital, about the bills piling up on her kitchen table, about the 47 rejection letters sitting in her email inbox. She thought about Harrison throwing money at her face, about the executives laughing as she picked it up, about all the times she'd been told, explicitly or implicitly, that she didn't belong, that she wasn't enough, that she should be grateful for whatever scraps the world threw her way. And then she thought about what she'd just done. She'd walked into a room full of powerful people who saw her as nothing, and she'd changed everything. "I have one condition," Maya said. Sterling raised an eyebrow. "Name it." "There's a woman named Mrs. Chen. She owns a laundromat in Chinatown. She's like family to me. She's the one who taught me Mandarin, the reason I understood anything tonight. Her building is being sold to developers. She's going to lose everything she's built over 50 years. Maya met Sterling's eyes. "If you want to hire me, help her keep her building?" Sterling was quiet for a moment. Then he smiled. "Done. Anything else?" "One more thing." Maya reached into her pocket and pulled out the crumpled $20 bill. "I want you to donate this to a charity that helps families with medical debt. It's not much, but it's more than Harrison thought I was worth. I want it to go somewhere that proves him wrong." Sterling took the bill from her hand and looked at it for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. "Miss Williams, I think you and I are going to get along just fine." The story didn't end in that conference room. It was just beginning. The SEC investigation into Richard Harrison revealed a network of corruption that went deeper than anyone expected. 3 more executives were implicated. $12 million in bribes were traced to offshore accounts. Harrison was arrested 6 weeks later, facing charges that could put him in prison for 15 years. The Chinese investors fled the country, but international warrants followed them. Sterling Industries stock, which had been quietly declining for months under Harrison's mismanagement, surged 18% once the fraud was exposed. 2,000 employees kept their jobs. Most of them never knew how close they'd come to losing everything, or that a delivery girl had saved them. Maya started at Sterling Industries 2 weeks after graduation. She was the youngest financial analyst in the company, the only one without an Ivy League pedigree or a family connection, and the subject of considerable curiosity among her new colleagues. Some resented her. They called her the charity case behind her back, whispered that she'd only gotten the job because of luck, because of timing, because Sterling felt guilty. Maya ignored them. She arrived early, stayed late, and produced work that made the whispers harder to sustain. Within 6 months, she'd identified inefficiencies that saved the company $2 million. Within a year, she'd been promoted to senior analyst. Within 3 years, she'd been named the youngest vice president in Sterling Industries history. Mrs. Chen kept her laundromat. Sterling's legal team found a loophole in the developer's contract, then funded the purchase of the building outright. Mrs. Chen cried when she heard the news, the first time Maya had ever seen her cry. "You did this," she said to Maya, clutching her hands. "You remembered." Maya shook her head. "You did this. You taught me. Everything I know, everything I am. It started in your laundromat." Mrs. Chen hung a photo in her shop. Maya at her Columbia graduation, cap and gown, smiling. Underneath, in both English and Chinese, a small plaque read, "She listened, she learned, she remembered." Maya visited every Sunday, just like she had as a child. Some things were worth keeping, no matter how much the world changed. Maya's mother, Denise, lived to see her daughter become vice president. The chemotherapy worked, the cancer retreated. Denise was there when Maya moved into her first real apartment, when Maya bought her first car, when Maya stood on stage at Sterling's annual gala and received an award for ethical leadership. "I always knew," Denise told her, tears streaming down her face. "I always knew you'd be something." Maya held her mother's hand, the same hand that had gripped hers in that hospital bed years ago, demanding that she finish her degree, demanding that she not let sickness steal her future. "You made me something," Maya whispered. "Everything I am is because you wouldn't let me quit." The delivery bag with Denise's name embroidered inside never left Maya's office. It hung on a hook behind her desk, faded and worn, a reminder of where she'd come from. New employees sometimes asked about it. Maya would smile and tell them the story, not the version that appeared in Forbes or the Wall Street Journal, but the real version, The one about a single mother who worked 3 jobs. About an old woman in a laundromat who taught a lonely girl to speak Mandarin. About a $20 bill thrown at her face and the choice she made not to walk away. Everyone in that room saw a delivery girl, Maya would say. They saw someone beneath them, someone invisible, someone who didn't matter. But I wasn't invisible. I was just waiting for the right moment to be seen. 5 years after that night in the conference room, Maya Williams became the chief financial officer of Sterling Industries, the youngest CFO in the company's history, and the first black woman to hold the position. James Sterling, now 73 and preparing for retirement, made the announcement himself. When I met Maya Williams, he told the assembled board, she was delivering sushi to a room full of people who treated her like she was nothing. She had every reason to walk away and let us fail. Instead, she spoke up. She saved this company. She saved 2,000 jobs. And she taught me something I should have learned a long time ago. He paused, looking at Maya with something like pride. The most valuable people in any room are often the ones we refuse to see, the ones we dismiss, the ones we throw $20 at and tell to disappear. He smiled. Maya Williams never disappeared, and Sterling Industries is better for it. At her first board meeting as CFO, Maya placed one item on the table before the proceedings began. A worn, faded delivery bag with Denise Williams embroidered inside in golden thread. The board members stared at it, confused. This bag belonged to my mother, Maya explained. She was a delivery driver, a cleaning woman, a night shift worker. She never made more than $30,000 a year. She raised me alone, put me through school, and taught me that hard work matters even when nobody's watching. Maya looked around the table at the executives in their expensive suits. I keep this bag to remind myself where I came from, and to remind everyone in this room that the people who deliver our food, clean our offices, and work the jobs we don't see, they matter. They're not invisible. They're just waiting for someone to notice. The board approved Maya's first major initiative unanimously, a comprehensive program to improve wages and benefits for Sterling's lowest-paid workers. Living wages, health care access, educational scholarships for employees' children. It cost the company $12 million annually. It reduced turnover by 40% and increased productivity by 23%. But more than the numbers, it changed the culture. Sterling Industries became known as a company that valued everyone, from the CEO to the custodial staff. Maya's face appeared on the cover of Fortune magazine under the headline, "The CFO Who Started at the Bottom." She kept a copy in her office, right next to the delivery bag. Maya still visits Mrs. Chen every Sunday. She still calls her mother every night before bed. And once a year, on the anniversary of that night in the conference room, she orders sushi from Nobu, has it delivered to her office, and tips the driver $500. Pass it on, she tells them. You never know what someone's carrying. You never know what they understand. Most drivers are too stunned to respond. A few have cried. One young woman, a Columbia student working nights to pay tuition, hugged Maya and whispered, "How did you know I needed this?" Maya just smiled. Because I was you, and someone saw me when I thought I was invisible. Richard Harrison served 4 years in federal prison. He emerged a broken man, his reputation destroyed, his fortune seized. Maya received a letter from him once, a rambling apology, half genuine, half bitter. She never responded. She didn't need his apology. She had never done what she did for revenge or recognition. She did it because 2,000 people would have lost their jobs. She did it because her mother raised her to do the right thing, even when it was hard. She did it because Mrs. Chen taught her that language is power, and power should be used to protect people, not exploit them. The $20 bill Harrison had thrown at her face was donated to a medical debt charity, as promised. It helped pay off the hospital bills for a single mother in Ohio, a woman Maya never met but thought about often. $20. Harrison thought it was an insult. Maya turned it into a gift. Some nights, when the office is empty and the Seattle skyline glitters outside her window, Maya takes down her mother's delivery bag and holds it. She traces the golden thread with her fingers, feels the worn fabric, remembers all the nights she spent pedaling through rain and cold, wondering if anything would ever change. Everything changed, but not because of luck, not because of charity, because she paid attention, because she learned, because when the moment came to speak up or stay silent, she chose to speak. They saw a delivery girl, Maya says when people ask about that night. They saw someone who didn't matter. But I was never just a delivery girl. She smiles, holding her mother's bag close. I was my mother's daughter. I was Mrs. Chen's student. I was a woman who understood more than they ever imagined. She hangs the bag back on its hook and returns to her desk, ready for tomorrow. And I was exactly where I was supposed to be.